When thinking of what the best game of all time is, many people have their preferences and opinions on what the best game is and why. Many will choose the game they grew up on playing, others will choose the game that they find the most fun, and others will choose the wrong. But regardless of preferences on what the best game is, there is an argument of what a perfect game is. And when discussing a perfect game, many games may come to mind such as Dark Souls 3, Resident Evil 2, Breath of the Wild, but there is one definitive answer when it comes to this question. The perfect game that anyone can pick up and enjoy at any time in their lives. Red Dead Redemption 2. After making a name for themselves with GTA and GTA again, Rockstar Games decided the best thing to do for their company was to drop absolute heat with Red Dead Redemption 2. The first Red Dead was regarded as a clear household name, and with the sequel following a random guy named Arthur, there's no way they could top the first game, right? Red Dead Redemption 2 is an absolute masterpiece of storytelling, acting, world building, and gaming in general. I can't praise this game enough for its campaign and the world they built. The active world while you play, the options and creativity you have with your character, and interactivity with the people around you, the horse ball. This game has so much detail that there's not enough time to go over it in one video. You'll probably experience all of it over the 100 hours you put into this game. So why is the game perfect? And what made it the masterpiece that it was? Let's dive into the horse balls of this game and find out. Also, major spoiler warning for this entire video. I can't talk about this game's story without spoiling some major plot points and reveals, so just a heads up to anyone who hasn't played the game yet. And if you haven't, why are you still watching this video? No, seriously, go away and play the game. To start off with the obvious reasons this game is popular, the story is amazing. It's not only one of the best stories in gaming, but one of the best stories of all time. To start off with the main character, I think Arthur Morgan is one of the best written redemption themed characters in fiction. His journey from an average gangster to a genuinely good man who just wants to protect his friends who have become his family on their journey together through the Old West is so well written and has so much depth to it that I could make an entire video on just Arthur Morgan alone. In fact, that's probably a good idea. He's introduced, and I find it ironic that the first thing he says is "we're bad men," but one of the last things that a character says to him is towards the end of the game near the time of Arthur's death, and it's,
"You lived your life like a man, Arthur, and you turned into a good man."
This was most likely intentional, but I noticed it on my second playthrough of the game, and I find it so cool how much foreshadowing is shown in the beginning of the story and throughout the whole campaign, with his tuberculosis being foreshadowed, the more you smoke, the plot with Micah being a rat, even though it was obvious, the horse having balls showing how he will leap off a cliff to screw you over. I didn't only like Arthur, but almost every side character is great in this game. Dutch was one of my favorite characters and antagonists throughout the game until he eventually betrayed us, because I genuinely couldn't tell if he was on our side or not till the end missions where it became painfully clear, to the point where I was literally screaming at the TV for Arthur to realize that he's not on our side anymore.
Arthur, please, you have to listen to me. Dutch is gonna betray you.
I liked how John was done in this game as well, and how he played a critical role in the story as Arthur's ride or die. I like Sadie a lot as well, and I was praying she would not die in the last mission. If she would have died, there is no Rockstar employee I would have not found. Her development into Arthur's other ride or die best friend was actually more interesting to me than John and Arthur's relationship throughout the game. She also is really funny and has some of the best missions in the game with Arthur. In fact, I found that the humor in this game was really good.
A European toy maker?
No, I am a fucking genius with poker up the ass.
And the goofy missions were executed just as well as the serious ones. Those were actually a lot of my favorite moments in the game. One of the most memorable missions in the game is Arthur and Lenny just getting drunk at a bar and trying to find each other while pissed out drunk. Lenny! Where you at, Lenny? And when the game gets serious, it does so in style. If you need any proof, just look at this clip of the gang pulling up to the farmhouse. Or that time when Arthur got to use a machine gun on a whole squad of officers who were gunning down the barn. The only slow part of the story was during the Guatemala section of the game, but that's just because you're without your stuff for a few missions. But you get it all back at the end and you're all set to go. Dutch, I don't think this is Tahiti, Dutch. Duh! Also, I have to mention the honor system because it's a simple mechanic that affects the game's story so much. The honor system is basically how nice versus how mean you are to people. It's really basic, and you gain honor by greeting people and being nice to NPCs or in the decisions you make throughout the story. You lose honor by robbing people, killing random strangers, or just being flat out rude. This system also affects the story and dialogue as well. If you have high honor, Arthur is much more sympathetic to those around him in the gang, and when someone dies, he'll usually be very sad or upset about losing his friends. While on the other hand, with low honor, he usually is cold to his friends' deaths or the feelings of those around him. He also is much more threatening to those around him and will be much crueler and harsher in how he treats NPCs. So basically, do you want to play as a ruthless killer or a man seeking, wait for it, redemption? But speaking of shootouts, that brings me to my next point. The gameplay for Red Dead 2 is so realistic and in-depth, it's almost a flaw. But it's not, and for good reason. There are many times in this game where you're on a time constraint during missions so that the gangs pulling up won't catch you. So you have to grab each and every item you take with you. So during this time constraint, as you hear the gangs getting closer, it adds tension to grab the essentials you may need and take with you, and it gives a sense of urgency to hurry and go as fast as you can. Many think this is a flaw where you grab one thing at a time, and I can agree when you're chilling in this game it does get a bit tedious, but I think it works well for the context of the missions for the most part. Now on to the gunfights, because this combat system is so fun. I put this gameplay on par with Resident Evil 4 and Fallout New Vegas for my favorite third-person shooter games ever. I love the feel of every gun you have. It feels like you really are in an old western movie that you always saw your grandpa watching. The pistols and shotguns and rifles and snipers and revolvers and dynamite all scream old western, and not only that, but the Deadeye adds so much fun to the fights. Also, depending on where you shoot someone can change how they'll fight. If you shoot them in the leg, they'll be running slower and limping for the rest of the fight. If you shoot them in the arm, they'll switch hands or drop the weapon. If you shoot them in the head, well, you just shot them in the head. I also like how you can take different approaches to each encounter, whether you want to be stealthy or go in guns blazing, or sometimes just avoid the fight entirely. It's lots of fun, and the large scale of the map adds to the fun because you can take different routes to the base or camp and use different strategies for each playthrough. The detailed movement of your character, injuries you cause to your enemies based on where you shoot them, the strategies you can take for each fight add so much depth to the game, and I appreciate how much effort the devs put into the combat. Also, I like the horse rides of this game because not only do you get to explore the scenery of the beautiful western map the devs designed, but you also get to hear really good dialogue or banter between each character. And the writing is really good for this game, so I was never really bored with a horse mission. Which leads me on to my next point. The world of Red Dead 2 feels alive and active no matter where you are in the story or on your side quests. The workers have their sleep patterns and work hours, much like Skyrim, where you'll find NPCs who were at shops during the daytime, in the bar at night. You'll find lumberjacks cutting down trees, and every so often a tree will fall depending on how long they've been cutting it, so no encounter with NPCs feels the same. Unless you greet them too much, then they will just kind of walk away and think you're weird. Also, the honor system is really well implemented with Arthur's character, not only in the story, but in the game in general. The comments he makes to antagonize people in high honor are much more wittier and light-hearted compared to his threats in low honor. Depending on the type of playthrough you will have affects how you treat others in the world around you. Many times, the NPCs will be more scared of you than in your high honor playthrough, and it affects the dialogue with the main cast as well. Also, if you're gone for too long from the camp you're stationed at, Dutch will send out someone to go look for you and check on you. It only happened to me once, but still, the fact that this is a world event that can happen is really cool to me. The world feels like it's always busy, even when you aren't, and this adds a level of character to the world itself that many games don't have. I think the developers outdid themselves with the map they designed, and I love the little things that they put effort in, including your horse's balls shrinking when it gets cold. Also, the music for this game and all the major events goes so unfathomably hard. Each track for the missions or town sets the stage for what you're in for. And it was actually the music that sold me on this being one of the best games of all time when I rode my horse through the night to Unshaken. Genuinely one of the best scenes in gaming history. Red Dead Redemption 2 is notorious for all that I've mentioned, and Rockstar Games is notorious for quality over quantity with the games they release. Do I think there will be a Red Dead 3? No. But if there was, it better follow Sadie. I also think it's unnecessary for there to be a third game. This one ended off all the characters and their stories perfectly. I also think that their writing and storytelling and gameplay peaked in this game. The emotion and investment we all had while playing this game was unmatched, and I know there's not many other places they could go with this story. The Van der Linde gang had their endings, and they were all poetic in their own ways, leaving the story to rest and let it be solidified in the Hall of Fame of gaming as one of the greatest written pieces of fiction ever. Don't touch the story or mess with the rest of the series, Rockstar. Leave off on a high note and let this story remain in the perfect and poetic ending that you made it to be. And if you do, please give me more Sadie.